LG G7 is a pretty good phone. It's got all the bells and whistles that you'd probably want in a modern day smartphone, but its biggest problem when it launched was that the price was just a little bit too high. Now the price has come down in the last couple of months, and that's led people to kind of take a second look. But at this point, LG wants to lower the price even further by introducing a separate phone called the LG G7 One. The LG G7 One's body is extremely similar to the LG G7. You probably wouldn't even be able to tell that they were different, except for the fact that the One's body is actually brushed glass instead of that other glass that the G7 used, so there's actually way less fingerprints to be seen on the back of the phone. Even the back of the phone looks pretty much exactly the same. The camera sensor, it looks just like it does on the G7, but where you usually find that wide angle sensor that LG is pretty famous for, there are other sensors like a proximity sensor that just help the regular camera take images. Besides that change with the wide angle camera, this is pretty much the same body. It's still got the headphone jack with the quad DAC, so that's really awesome, and the Google Assistant button is still really useful. I'm really glad they kept it there. It's even still IP68 water resistant, which is really great because they didn't actually take that out even though it's a more budget phone, but they did remove the wireless charging, so you're not gonna get that feature, but I don't really think it's caught on yet anyway. It's also got the same 3000 milliamp hour battery that you're gonna find in the G7, but it uses Quick Charge 3 instead of Quick Charge 4, so it's probably gonna take a little bit longer to charge up. There's also only 4 gigs of RAM versus the 6 gigs of RAM in the original G7, but phones on the Android One platform are usually a lot more lightweight anyway, so there's not going to be a really heavy-duty launcher that's pulling this thing down. Probably the biggest spec disappointment in this phone for me is the 32 gigs of storage that comes standard with it, and I know that 32 gigs is probably enough for a lot of people, but I feel like in 2018, we should have at least moved up to 64 gigs of storage, and I like having at least that because I store a lot of media locally on my phone. Now, like I said earlier, this is an Android One device, and again, Android One's not actually a forked OS of Android. It's just a program where Google develops phones in collaboration with other companies, and that way they can kind of put their vision for Android on third-party hardware. And finally, the LG G7 One is running a Snapdragon 835 processor. So it's last year's flagship, it's not the newest 845 that's out now, but I don't think that that really matters to them. The 835 is still a really good chip, and if they're able to make this phone super budget because of it, then I'm all for it. Now the problem here is that LG hasn't actually announced a price or availability for this phone, and I think that it kind of needs to be under $400 for people to actually consider it. The Pocophone by Xiaomi is out now, and that's got a ton of press because it's got a Snapdragon 845, a ton of RAM, and 64 gigs of storage, and that's $300. So I feel like LG is really going to have to step up their game in the pricing department if they really want anyone to buy this thing. Anyways, I only got to spend about an hour with the G7 One, but if you have any questions, make sure you leave them in the comments section below, and make sure you stay tuned to our website. You can read the full article with our specs list and everything, because of course, we are your source for all things Android.